Okay, I think we can start. So welcome this afternoon, everyone. My name's Jacob. I work in the MMO's IUU team. I'm going to be giving a presentation this afternoon on the topic that you can see on your screen, hopefully, which is the UK exports and EU legislative changes that are coming up in January 2026. I'm going to be presenting alongside a colleague of mine from our compliance team, Chloe, and between us, we're going to deliver the material this afternoon. So just bear with me 2 seconds. So as I've said, myself and my colleague Chloe are going to be presenting. We're going to have an introduction to traceability, followed by labeling requirements. They will then move on to the 2026 export updated requirements, which I'll cover. EU catch, we'll have a DEFRA policy update and a Q&A session at the end. What I would just ask as well is we do have a Q&A function, I believe, in the chat this afternoon. If there are questions, feel free to put your hand up and ask questions, but we would ask that questions are held to the end. We won't be stopping midway through the presentation in order to answer questions, just to help the session flow. But like I say, if you'd rather, you can put some questions in the chat as well, and colleagues of ours will be monitoring the chat and posting these. So either or, absolutely fine. And without further ado, I will hand over to Chloe.
Good afternoon. So I'm here to talk about traceability and labelling. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So what is traceability and why does it matter? Traceability is its ability to trace something as it moves through a process. For the fishing industry, this means being able to trace fish or fisheries products right from the sea to plate. In the UK, it's a legal requirement that fish is fully traceable from catch to marketing to export and consumption. Accurate labelling and sharing of information is essential for seafood businesses. It ensures that fish and shellfish has been caught legally and is safe to eat. It ensures that fish can be successfully exported. Documents need to be available and accurate to those doing the exporting. And it satisfies consumer confidence and interest and regulators like ourselves. Next slide, please. There are numerous benefits to seafood traceability. Benefits to health, such as protecting consumer health, improving industry practice, and protecting worker rights. Wealth, preventing food fraud, making market access equal, and cost savings by improved supply chain efficiency. And to the environment, supporting fisheries management, reducing IUU activity, and recognising good environmental practice. As well as the MMO, there are other regulators that have an interest in traceability, such as the Food Standards Agency, Port Health Authorities. And as well as regulators, it's important for the fishers, the supply chain, and the consumers to have traceable products. So to achieve traceability, we need good quality labelling. Fisheries products go through multiple processes before reaching the final consumer. Can you go back, please? And traceability must be maintained throughout. This requires the product to be labelled at every stage of the chain. Next, please. On landing, all lots of fisheries products destined for marketing must be labelled. So a lot means a quantity of fisheries or aquaculture product of a given species of the same presentation, coming from the same relevant geographical area and the same fishing vessel or group of fishing vessels. So that means that if you're in the fishing sector, not every single box, every single fish has to be labelled individually. You can group your fish and provide a label that covers all of it. So there is a long list of labelling requirements for fish on landing, and this is a pre-existing UK legislation. It's been in for years. Most of the information needed for export is already required under that legislation. Devolved governments are engaging with the catching sector to try and improve compliance with labelling requirements, and we're focusing on the elements of those labels that are required for export. We're also requesting some additional information on those labels to facilitate export. Press enter, please. So to facilitate trade and export, the supply chain is going to need to know trip dates. So that's the date the vessel left port on the trip that the fish was caught to the first day of landing for that trip. It's also going to need the gear code subcategory. So for example, OTB or otter bottom trawl, rather than it simply stating trawl as it may have previously. The port of landing and the exclusive economic zone, e.g. UK EEZ, and if applicable, the RFMO or high seas area. More details provided on that later in the presentation. Next, please. So the MMO has created a suggested landing label template that's available to download from our website. It's not a requirement to use this exact template. It's just there to kind of support the industry in helping make sure they've got all the information they need. Lots of the information that's required on a label is standard, so it will be the same for every single trip. So that can be completed on the template prior to printing it, and then only the elements that you don't know until after the fish has been caught will need to be completed on landing, such as the species and weights. Next, please. So we've created an example label for a multi-lot trip as well. So currently, most fish boxes contain a chit that says the vessel name and PLN. If a unique identifier is added to that, so a number that's unique to that box of fish, then that can be put onto a summary label. If you could press next for me, please. And again, there we go. So this is an example of a summary label. So all of that information that's the same for every piece of fish that's been landed on that trip is captured at the top. And then at the bottom, we've got a list of species with the unique identifier that's on that chit and a weight. Next, please. So fish must be labelled at all stages of the supply chain. As a merchant, processor or exporter, you may be responsible for additional requirements from other bodies, such as the Food Standards Agency, things like best before dates, for example. There are changes to the requirements for labels on import to the EU after the 10th of January. We can advise on the legislation, but not on how it's going to be enforced in EU ports. Next, please. Those are just some examples of other people that may have labelling requirements that you need to adhere to. Next, please. Okay. So the same as on landing, the labels are required per lot, so not on every individual product. Next, please. And for export, next, please. We've got a very similar list of requirements. Most of the information needed on that label is the same as required for UK labels, and it is required per lot, not per package. From the 10th of January, the big change is that your lot label will need to include your catch certificate numbers. Next, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Chloe. I apologise as well. I think there was a slight delay on me clicking the next slide there, so I do apologise for that. And as we stated at the start, so I'm going to now cover changes to the EU's catch certificate requirements for import in the EU, so our exports. There are a number of changes that are coming up in relation to catch certificates for export. So I'm going to cover these this afternoon. So as you can see on the banners that are coming up along your screen now, we have a number of different changes that will feature on the updated catch certificate templates. So catch dates, catch areas, fishing gear, transport details, and cosmetic changes as well. So we'll go into these in a bit more detail. Catch date. So Chloe has already covered this actually during her presentation, but just to reiterate, so the start date is defined as the date that the vessel left port on the trip that the fish was landed. The end date remains the same as the date currently recorded as date landed. And one thing to note there is that if the landing takes place over more than one day, then it's the first day that the landing begins. And you can see the date being entered there in the graphic on the right-hand side of your screen. The catch area, again, as Chloe did touch on before in her presentation, is now a requirement in the catch certificate. So this will be a requirement for the recording of the exclusive economic zone. So for example, if the fish was caught in UK waters, it would be in the EEZ of the UK. or if it was outside of an EEZ, then recording what high seas area that the fish was caught in. And these bits of information are in addition to the FAO area, as you can see there. For waters surrounding the UK, that would be FAO 27. There is also now an optional field for regional fisheries management organisations, so that you can enter the name of the relevant RFMO within that field. So as far as the catch area goes, exporters will now need to provide, as I said before, the EEZ or the high seas area where the fish was caught. To be clear, the EEZ is the exclusive economic zone of a given country, and it extends out to 200 nautical miles from the coastline of a given country. Where the country shares waters with other countries, it would be the median line between those two coastal states. That's where the EEZ would reach out to. So you can see that highlighted in the graphic on the right-hand side of your screen. So all of the light blue area is the EEZ of the UK. You then have various EEZs of various EU member states and other countries, Norway, and the orange area there on the left-hand side of that graphic is the high seas area, so that would be the NIAFC high seas zone. So RFMOs are international organisations, as I said before. Regional Fisheries Management Organisations is what it stands for. And they are organisations establishing binding measures for conservation and sustainable management of highly migratory or straddling fish species. The high seas are international marine waters outside the jurisdiction of any country beyond the 200 nautical mile limit of the EEZ. So there is, and I think again Chloe had touched on this requirement in the labelling presentation, but there is now a requirement to provide the category of gear and the type of gear within that category used to catch each fisheries product. There is going to be a predefined list for exporters to select the gear when they are applying for their catch certificate through the Fish Export Service. Again, you can see on the right-hand side there the nature of that application. So you would have your gear category and then your gear type. Transport details is another section on the catch certificate that has been updated. So all known transport information at the point of creating the catch certificate should be entered onto the catch certificate. The EU will require details to be printed on the catch certificate. These will need to be inputted manually. From January 2026, the exporter will be responsible for filling in the transport details, including in the appendix to the EU's updated catch certificate template, indicating the port or place of departure and the means of transport. The exporter must complete the details of the first known transport at the point of export in the appendix to the catch certificate. That's just an important point, because we do understand that the exporter won't always know the absolute final destination of a product. But at the very least, what should be provided is the sort of first leg of the journey, as it were. Where additional modes of transport are known, i.e. after the consignment leaves the UK, these can also be added manually to the catch certificate. The point of destination must also be included on the catch certificate. This can be the final destination within the EU that the consignment is travelling to, or if it is not known, the first stop on its journey. So that's just what I covered before. There will also be a number of cosmetic changes, basically changes to the way that the catch certificate appears during these changes that are coming up. These changes will be cosmetic in nature, and they won't affect the actual application process. So the IMO unique vessel identifier, where applicable, this will now be auto-populated. Section 7, which is the transshipment and landing authorization in a port area. This is for completion by the importing country's authorities and will not appear in the application screens for UK exporters. That is the nature with lots of the other cosmetic changes coming up that you'll see now. So section 11 is the importer declaration. Several new fields will be added to the PDF version for the section. Again, this is for importers, so it shouldn't or won't affect the application process for exporters. The same can be said for section 12, which is for completion by the import control authority. So that would be the competent authorities in the importing EU member state. And again, section 13, in the event of a refusal of a catch certificate for import, that would then be used by the importing competent authority as well. So again, these sections aren't for completion by anyone who is exporting their fish. Moving on to the processing statement, there are minimal changes to the actual template that is used for the processing statement and the information contained within. The main changes that we're seeing with regards to processing and processing statements are the requirements for when the processing statements are actually needed. So less about the content of the forms, more about when the forms are needed themselves. Also quite handily, the EU have now introduced a definition for processing, which wasn't present before. So that definition is as follows. So processing operations requiring a processing statement, Annex 4, include cutting, filleting, canning, smoking, salting, cooking, pickling, drying, or preparing fish for market in any other manner. Fisheries products subject only to freezing and or packing will not require a processing statement or an Annex 4 document. So the processing statement will be required for processing operations carried out on fisheries products after landing in approved establishments. So the main change here is that where, for example, if we're using the UK, if a UK vessel lands fish into the UK and then it is subsequently processed after landing, we will now require a processing statement in order for that fish to be imported at the EU, so exported from the UK. So we have got an example scenario here to go through just to lay that out. So the vessel Amber G lands 1,000 kilograms of gutted cod. Andy buys 500 kilograms of cod to make into cod fillets. Andy created a catch certificate for the 500 kilograms of cod to be exported, and the catch certificate number is on the screen there. What we would expect from the processing side of things is the information to be displayed as per the boxes below. So you'd have your catch certificate number in the left-hand box, any vessels involved in the fishing activity, so that is just referred to in the catch certificate, validation referred to in the catch certificate, a description of the catch itself, so that was cod, and importantly, the total landed weight isn't the total landed weight of the actual landing primarily, it is the amount of fish that is going to processing. So because Andy only bought the 500 kilograms of cod to be processed, that is what is entered onto the processing statement, which is then repeated in the catch processed and then the final processed fisheries product, which is the net weight of the processed fisheries product. And we then have the screen, which is the screen that allows exporters to link their species to the products that have been that are the outcome of the processing discussed in the previous screen. We then have the final document, which is the non-manipulation document, which was previously referred to as the storage document. There is now been an introduction of a template of this document. This was published on the 17th of March 2025 and can be seen on the right-hand side of the screen there. Previously, there was no template for that document. It was generated on a very ad hoc basis by various flag states, and yeah, that didn't make sort of the auditing processes around those documents particularly easy. So they have introduced a template. There has been an introduction of additional fields, which we will cover. And currently, these documents are required when a consignment from a third country, so not UK caught fish, but fish that has been caught in a different country, makes its way to the UK and remains for any amount of time whilst not in transit. So the important thing here is that at the minute, these documents are required where there isn't a sort of single transport process in play. The requirement to provide a non-manipulation document now exists when a consignment is split. So it's no longer just important for when stock is kept for any given time. It is also if that stock is split for whatever reason. So if a consignment is split into a number of consignments, then you will need a non-manipulation document to show that process as well. So the new fields on a non-manipulation document. Arrival to the place of storage section has been added. So this includes details of the consignment's journey prior to the storage, the date of departure, method of transport, and the place of departure. There is an updated consignment details section split into two. So consignment details upon arrival of place of storage, consignment details upon departure of place of storage. And naturally that would be useful where consignments are split, and you can detail that process within there. The departure from place of storage details, so this includes date of departure, point of departure from country of storage, details of transport, and point of destination. It is worth pointing out at this point in time as well that there are, my apologies, I've skipped too quickly, that there are exemptions from the IU requirements. I won't go through the exemptions, but they are based on the products themselves, and they are listed currently on the screen there. So they range from freshwater products, aquaculture, down to various different species. And those exemptions are based on various sort of management plans that exist for lots of different species that can be caught at sea. We now have EU catch. So our colleagues in Northern Ireland are running sessions on catch for their importers and other interested parties, and you can find their contact details there. So slo@dira.ni.gov.uk. Catch is integrated within the Traces NT platform. So Traces is the EU platform that is used for imports. Catch is an EU-wide IT system used to manage documentation related to the import, re-export, and where applicable, export of fisheries products. It's the EU's first IT tool to streamline the checks and verifications of fisheries products entering the EU market. And the UK are looking at digital solutions for integration with the EU. Now, we do have the DEFRA policy update, so I will just pause there and see if one of my colleagues from DEFRA are okay to come in.
I think Jacob, Jodie normally covers this.
Right, okay.
Sorry.
That's absolutely, that's quite all right. No problem. Bear with me 2 seconds. So the EU's new import requirements will also apply to seafood which has been imported into the UK, processed or stored, and then re-exported to the EU, which are referred to as indirect exports. Apologies. UK exporters will have to provide the same additional information to EU importers for indirect exports as for exports originating in the UK. To support UK exporters obtaining this additional information, the UK will be changing our import requirements by amending the IU documents set out in the UK's IU regulation to mirror the EU requirements and ensure the continuous flow of trade with the EU. This legislative change is expected to come into force in spring 2026, and ahead of this change, the UK is engaging with countries that export to the UK to agree their use of the EU's revised IU documents and processes where exporting products to the UK. We have had some sort of extensive talks with third countries, and as I've said, that is ongoing, and we are also running sessions, it's fair to say, on the re-export requirements adjacent to these sessions that are ongoing. So what I'll make sure happens is also that details of those sessions are circulated after this presentation as well. So the MMO plan there's been numerous steps to the MMO plan in order to prepare for this. So update the UK IU documents to implement template changes and remain compliant with the EU requirements. Update the application screens, which we've already been through, to allow for completion of the new sections within the fish export service. Incrementally release changes to the service so as not to overburden industry and make every change all at once. We've conducted user research sessions quite extensively and made sure that the changes are can sort of facilitate trade as best as possible. There is the Fish Trace Ship campaign website, which has lots of information for industry operators in relation to the changes and how they may be affected. We've done extensive communications plan across the whole supply chain, There has been updated guidance added to the .gov pages. We are continuing to communicate with the EU along these changes, again, to make sure that trade is facilitated as best as possible. We are conducting wider work on traceability, which ties into the presentation that Chloe gave. And we have created the UK Frequently Asked Questions FAQs on the new requirements. And that is the end of the presentation. So I will stop there and pause for any questions, and I will stop sharing my screen so that I can see the chat.